This week on Layman's Term Show, it is week 2 of For Heaven's Sake, Renewal, Not Escape. When you close your eyes and envision heaven, what images come to mind? Fluffy clouds, rays of light, or perhaps angels with harps? Our perception of the afterlife are often shaped by our primary experiences, cultural influences, and even popular Christian media. But what if our common understanding of heaven is incomplete? Let's embark on a journey through Scripture to explore a perspective on human and heaven that might challenge our preconceptions and offer a more profound hope for the future. Now, let's get into the show.
Mitch, how are you today?
I'm doing great, buddy. You?
I'm doing great.
Well, I mean, we're a little bit behind.
We got a couple of vacations. You went on vacation.
You went on vacation. Yeah,
it was great.
Or holiday.
Holiday.
Some would say.
As some across the pond would say. So this is an interesting. This is going to be an interesting conversation today. So we're in week 2 of For Heaven's Sake, and really looking at the concept of we're not escaping Earth for heaven, but that biblically it talks about the renewal of all things, the renewal of Earth,
a new heaven and a new earth.
New earth,
and we've shout out some books that have been part of this series and study. One of my personal favorites is Jerry Walls. Big Jerry Walls fan. Jerry, if you're out there listening to the show, I wish you'd do more podcasts. I love listening to you speak. He wrote Heaven, Hell, and Purgatory. He's written quite a bit of Wesleyan Arminian theology takes on heaven and hell. He did some several books on those subjects, but my favorite, he piles it all together in one. And then we also had 4 Views on Heaven.
Yep.
Used 4 different authors. There's also 4
a companion.
Companion. We've heard, I haven't read, but I hear is less exciting. 4 Views on Hell. But all great reads if this is something that interests you and you want to dive into more. I want to shout out those books as well.
So obviously those books are kind of an influence for you personally around your views on heaven and hell. But like from a more of a pop culture or cultural influence beyond maybe some more biblically based books, how do you think your view before kind of deep diving into this was really shaped by traditional culture, TV shows, movies, songs? How would you say that you like what influenced you? What shaped kind of your thought process before reading these books?
Yeah, so I'd say historically, I would think we have this kind of, for my cultural imprintation from my Middle American rural life experiences, right? We have this kind of concept of post-mortem. You are in a heaven-like state. The soul is in existence. The soul has identity, but is free of pain and suffering and remorse and united with God and experiences a heavenly existence. Right?
Okay.
Is that similar to maybe some of your... I'm trying to boil it down here.
Yeah.
Off the cuff.
I think that...
Trying to put it in layman's terms, man.
Yeah. I think that everybody hopes that their significant
Loved
others,
ones.
their loved ones that they really cherished on earth is in heaven and looking down on them.
Kind of some key points, right? There's this hope, and even though it may not be reinforced theologically or biblically through our culture or through the burial process, or it may not be reinforced, it's also kind of like an unspoken held belief that, the spirit continues to exist, which fully on board with that and believe that, has its identity, it's maintains an identity that was shaped and developed in Earth of Ash, but then also has some sort of connection with the existing Earth also.
Yeah.
Right. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. That's that connection between the two realms.
That's kind of a trifecta of cultural Christian belief with it.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to get into cultural belief with it, there's people who think you just poof, you're gone. That's the end.
Right.
Nothing else.
Man,
but the cultural Christian, we're just trying to boil it down, right?
Yeah, and I would say that, you know, one, we're not trying to offend anybody out there that's got some deep held belief of, you know, whatever, right? Whatever it is. And really it all boils down to, we just don't know. There's not enough. I don't think there's a ton of information in the Bible will lay it out for us.
Scripturally speaking.
Right.
No.
And so I think for a lot of us, we're trying to envision something that's hard to envision because A, we don't have a lot of information, and then B, we're probably incapable of understanding it just
100%.
mentally. Right. Okay. So then we kind of form some of these thoughts and opinions that then get passed down from generation to generation, and then those thoughts and opinions end up in TV shows and you know, movies and stuff. And you know, I think that it's hard sometimes to divest or, you know, separate what you want to happen and what could happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think we all want X, Y, or Z to happen, but like in reality, it's probably ABC, right? I think that from a cultural influence, can I talk about something that really bothers me?
Oh, of course. That's what we're here for.
And this is going to be, you may not agree with me on this.
Oh, good. We haven't argued in a while.
Yeah. And maybe a lot of the viewers may not agree on this, or listeners. I have a really hard time when someone passes away and someone else says, oh, you know they're in heaven right now with God looking down on you. I have a hard time saying that. And I know it's a euphemism. It's
misguided.
But it's misguided. Mm-hmm. It's completely misguided. And I wish in a way we would stop saying that. We would just stop saying it, you know, because I don't think that it's one, scripturally based. I think it's culturally based. And I think people say that when they don't know what else to say.
Yep.
And I learned this lesson a long time ago with some other things. When you're in an argument and somebody's like, "Well, you're a jerk," the best response is, "I'm sorry you feel that way."
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to defend yourself or calling them a name or whatever. Just, hey, I'm sorry you feel that way, right? Because that's in essence what you are. Like, that's what you feel. Like, I don't feel like I'm a jerk, right? So I'm like, I'm sorry that you've experienced that. I'm sorry that you feel that way.
Exactly. Feelings are facts.
Feelings.
Keith, if you feel that way, I can't dispute it. I can't dispute a feeling you have.
Right.
That's a fact to you. So it just is going to divulge into some argument that's
and I wish
silly and unnecessary.
Culturally, we just had a better way to say it other than they're in a better place. Oh, they're in a better place.
No, I think that one has. Now, here I'll argue with you because I think that one has a little more, in the ambiguity of it, has a little more truth and weight.
Okay.
Scripturally, we can say that there will be no more tears, no more suffering. Like, in this body, in this life, you will experience pain, suffering, hardship. Like so Scripture tells us in this life you will experience that. In the life to come, it won't be there.
Yeah.
Right. So when this life ends, even though maybe the final heaven and the final earth and the new creation hasn't happened yet, still for you this life has ended, and that pain will cease. So therefore, in a better place. Is kind of a great way of saying we're not capable of understanding or knowing fully what is on the other side. That is the great question.
Yeah.
But also it's a great question we should be okay with not having an answer to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can have a response for. But I do think in a better place is a factual statement.
Okay, so here's where I'm going to disagree.
All
okay?
right. Bring it.
And I think it depends on where you align from a universalist standpoint, right? If you believe that everybody goes to heaven, then you're going to disagree with my next statement. Okay.
I believe everyone is offered an opportunity for salvation.
What we can divulge that. We can talk about that later, right? But I feel like the existence of hell is a reality in this. I mean, we're talking about heaven, but you can't talk about heaven without also talking about hell. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you don't know a person's outcome in that spectrum. And so I don't necessarily think that hell is a better place than earth. And I'm not saying that I would ever wish anyone to choose hell over heaven if it's a choice, right? Because it is a choice. Salvation is a choice, right? But you gotta be open to the thought that at some point somebody may not be saved.
Of course. So I want to put out there a couple other reading options. Read The Great Divorce, C.S. Lewis. He a great writer. I align with if you read that and you're welcome to disagree with me. But I do align with Lewis that hell's a door locked from the inside.
I would agree.
Meaning salvation's offered, but sometimes it's a conscious decision that keeps the soul from maybe a simple way of putting it, a stubborn pride.
Yep.
Prevents accepting the salvation. That may sound ridiculous, but the more you read it, the more you look into it or study what Lewis means by that. Read some of the descriptions of it. It makes a lot of sense. I think that's that aspect right there reconciles a lot of the funny legalistic stuff around who's in, who's out, this happened, but what about that, right?
Sure.
I love the fact that, something for me, God has an opportunity to offer salvation to whomsoever God chooses to offer salvation to at whatever point God chooses to offer that salvation.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
So that sounds like I just said a lot of the same things twice in a row, connected in a weird way. But for me, I fully believe in that. And that's, I believe in a God who's powerful enough for that. So if that salvation opportunity is post-humorous, right? After
death.
Right? Then I believe in God who's powerful enough to do that.
Sure. I'm not disputing that, right? I think you and I align in there. I always think about, and I can't remember who explained it this way. But to me, and there was this image of a bunch of people surrounded by a big bowl of good smelling soup, right? And you got a spoon, but the spoon's like 6 foot long, so you can't feed yourself, right? And heaven is where everybody's dipping in that bowl of soup and feeding each other, and you're all eating this amazing food. You're laughing, you're joking, you're having a great time. You're feeding each other, right? And hell is more like people starving, trying to feed themselves constantly. If they just stopped for a second and realized that I could feed you and you could feed me, they could be in heaven, right? And so I think I would agree with you that we stand in our own way of, for you saying heaven is a door that's locked from the outside. I think it's better said.
Hell's a door locked from the inside.
Yeah, sorry. Hell's a door locked from the inside. that I think it's more apt for me to say that we stand in our own way of salvation, and that God is free to save you whenever he wants, not just here on earth, after death, whatever happens, right? And I think that we stand in our own way of that salvation.
And I think,
just like on earth,
oh yeah,
it'll be the same in heaven. So anybody that wants to stand in their own way of salvation, they can.
they're allowed to.
Now backtrack. So we agree on this.
We agree on that.
But I go backtrack. That's why I dislike it when people say they're in a better place, because it's a terrible, terrible statement that you're trying to find some words to make that other person feel better about the situation, when in essence saying nothing or something else would be better.
Of course.
And that's just my firm belief. I am not one to, and I'm probably hypocritical on this, right? I do it, but I dislike it when people put actions that God has done from their lips, like, oh, they're in heaven, oh, they're in a better place, I'm sure they're with God right now, or if there's an event, oh, God must have interceded in that event. There's no way that, I really just don't like it when we unfoundly, with no evidence whatsoever, just start ascribing things to God. I just dislike it.
Yeah, it's probably bad form.
But we do it all the time.
Yeah,
culturally.
it happens all the time.
Right? Culturally, we do it all the time. And I wish we would get away from that, because I think it just paints, it continues to perpetuate a view that somehow we can understand God more than God can understand himself.
Now, and I think too, I got this crazy theory also, like as organizations develop, or moving down through the generations and stuff too, we've put a lot of human rules in place, and it's just kind of a lot of if-then statements.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm a firm believer that, God has the final judgment, not a rule we humanly made. And, even as handed down scripturally as it is, or can be, I still also think God's saving grace is bigger than any of those also.
And I would argue that, and I think you would agree with me, if God can change his covenant with man by sending Jesus, and if he can change his covenant with man at any time that he wants to, he can also change salvation any time that he wants to. Right? To your point, he can choose to save whomever he wants, whenever he wants, including during life or after death. So, so I think that for us, trying to ascribe what God is going to do is terrible theology. It's like
predicting. It's like what's the Armageddon prediction or Doomsday prediction? Or, it's just,
this one comment is passing, and that's a sign of
doomsday
for everybody, right?
Whatever it is, it's a bad form.
Now, I do want to talk about. Let's switch a little bit, because there is some biblical evidence or scriptures that talk about kind of an intermediate state between death and the resurrection, and specifically the renewal of everything, right? The new heaven, new earth, and the renewal. And so I think this is where a lot of people might disagree in general about what is that intermediate state, right? You've got theology that would talk about how we're asleep. We die humanly, and we kind of fall asleep. And for us, it's a blink of an eye, right? We die, we fall asleep. Could be thousands of years, could be hundreds of thousands of years, right? Before the renewal.
Different for everybody.
Right. And then you just instantly wake back up at the renewal of everything, right? Versus you've got, all the way to the end of the spectrum, which is, you die, you go someplace, heaven, purgatory, hell, whatever, and you kind of wait out there until the renewal, right? What is your what is your thought process there? And then how does that kind of jive with this whole renewal thing?
Well, professor, theologian, pastor Jerry Walls puts it probably as cleanly as, and I don't have any quotes in front of me, but the more reading you do on this, the more reading I've done on this topic of writings that Dr. Jerry Walls has done, philosophically, theologically, rationally, when you go through those if-then statements of philosophy, you end up with the answers he ends up with, or conclusions he comes to, really make the most philosophic, theological sense
to you,
to me.
Okay.
So, but to boil that down a little bit is, I believe in the afterlife, we're going to have an identity that's in our soul. Our soul has an identity that it's not going to lose.
Okay.
Right? So, my soul beyond this life will have an identity that it's maintained. But to be unified with God through that identity, that soul has to be sanctified, has to be
cleansed
or purged of all sin and made perfect to be in perfect relationship with the Lord. So,
because Adam and Eve were perfect,
fallen,
and then we have
sinful.
So we have to cleanse that sin to be back.
We are fully broken, sinful
humans,
but to be back in full relationship with God at the new heaven and the new earth. So at the new creation, we have to be, if we have to be fully sanctified, fully made perfect to be in that, then that has to be a process that happens.
Okay.
Now, I think, and I don't fully know if Jerry fleshes this all out in that book, but if it's a process, that process has to take place, but also for the soul to have its identity and maintain its identity, it's a process that has to take place with that soul. If it was just a flashbang, clap of the hands, instant perfection, then theoretically your soul would be so cleansed it would have lost the identity it had created. Does that make sense? So repentance so go through the process of repentance and repentance and renewal is a process of that, is how your soul can maintain that identity through sanctification. Otherwise,
I'm not going to agree.
Otherwise, it could be like throwing a whole bunch of tie-dyed shirts in a bleach solution, and then all the shirts come out completely indistinguishable from the other, and there's no way to know which shirt went in with which pattern because all the pattern got washed out.
I'm gonna go back to God is all powerful and he can do whatever he wants.
Of course.
And so I think he could instantly clap his hands and you're clean. I don't understand. I think what we're doing is we're trying to put a time frame on something because that's what we understand.
No, I'm saying it. I'm not putting a time frame on it. I'm putting a transition on it. It could be a flash.
Okay.
But it could be a flash, but it has to be a transformative flash. Like a time-lapse video. It could take long, but it could be quick.
Is that why people see their life flash before their eyes?
Could be. I don't know, man. But you track with me?
Yeah,
So,
I guess.
I mean, you're
I
fully
think,
welcome to disagree with me, but I think the conundrum would be if after death I've become fully sanctified and made perfect and fully cleansed, instantaneously, then I also have to maintain my identity.
Yeah, so like you're saying that
My soul, the soul's identity.
your life experience. Well, let's backtrack for a second, okay? Let me ask you a question, because I think this gets into it a little bit. Do you feel that your soul, over your years of existing on this earth, is capable of change? Or is the soul that you were born with the same soul that you will die with?
No,
does your earthly experience affect your identity, your soul's identity?
Yes, of course.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
So therefore, what you're saying is that if you
John Wesley
you
thought
can't be remade into
John Wesley believed full perfect sanctification could actually be achieved this side of life.
Oh, well,
Right? Like, and that's a goal to hold.
That's probably not going to happen to me. Just getting real.
But
At beyond 40, I don't know if that's going to happen to me. I think that for me, looking at it, I do agree that there has to be some kind of intermediate state, because you can't go from imperfect world to new heaven, new earth, right? Perfect heaven. Obviously, it's still perfect now, but you can't go through that without there being some kind of intermediate, right? Like,
correct.
You know
I
what
also
mean?
think we're putting way too much limitations on things. Have you I think Hollywood does a great job at No, I'm serious.
Okay.
I think Hollywood does a great job at shedding a little light on like just the slightest hint at the possibility of the expanse of time and space that we can't fathom.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, for sure.
So with that, just little peek at things, like, or even just like the cosmos and like understanding the cosmos, like, you can lay out on your lawn and stare up at stars that don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
you're
yeah.
looking right at them, but they don't
Yeah.
exist anymore. Likewise, like crazy stuff that just like mind blowing. Like, you ever see that movie Interstellar? Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Just like Inception, like wild, just just the ability that I believe we're all made in God's image, and the thumbprint of God's creativity is left on us, and we have this tiny, 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 tiny ability to create like God creates.
Mm-hmm.
So then when we come up with some of the most craziest, mind-blowing expressions of art and science and vision of what could be possible, and like I said, Hollywood does a great job of kind of fleshing those out. Those are still just a fingernail scratch at the surface of what's fathomable and possible.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we have a really hard time kind of with this whole subject trying to wrap our mind around and grasp what's next.
Yeah, and to kind of your
like,
point, if you were capable of going back in time and you went back in time 200 years and you had a working cell phone, obviously it wouldn't work, but they didn't have like the towers and stuff, but that it had power and it could at least like show images, pictures, videos from the future. 100 years ago, 200 years ago, they probably would have burned you as a witch or something, right? Because it's unfathomable to them to have this little tiny device that can do so much, because they can't envision it.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine what what we can envision of the human species 100 years from now, or 200 years, or 300 years, what they can come up with, right?
Correct.
And so God is like that only millennia.
Yeah,
in the future.
Yeah, millennia is even a dumb word.
We can't even fathom it. I would agree with that.
So what I would say is, yeah, we can't like in a belief in an omnipresent, omnipotent, all-knowing, all-foretelling creator and redeemer. In that faith and belief there has infinitesimal possibilities of working outside of what we can even conceive as possible.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to unpack that further. But
so
but that's why it's the layman's term show,
which is great.
The time is running out. This has been a fun discussion.
I do want to leave maybe one thought for the listeners and the viewers out there to kind of ponder as they listen to our dribble
ramblings.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about how it's going to, the end goal is renewal, a new heaven and a new earth, right? Renewal. So I want you to think about, and our overall topic is renewal, not escape. So the idea of being here on earth now is not to escape earth, escape the pain, escape all this for a better place, like to be in a better place, but instead think about how you can approach life on earth today to make earth a better place today and bring some of that renewal now, right? And I think sometimes we get too trapped in looking to the future, right? That we're not looking at the present.
Yeah.
So I just want everybody out there to kind of ponder that as they go on throughout the day and think about what they can do to bring some of that renewal now instead of waiting for it.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is, be hope, be light, be truth, be what we're called to be, live into who you're created to be fully, pursue sanctification in the completeness. And
which some would say that's possible.
I've heard it said.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. And if you made it this far and you liked it, get a little like and subscribe, and we'll see you back next week for the final conversation on this topic.
Sounds good.
See you then.
Later.